2020 Board of Education, a virtual candidates forum presenting candidates for the Santa Monica. What happened there? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Vote 2020 Board of Education, a candidates forum presenting candidates for the Santa Monica College Board of Trustees. This forum is being co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters Santa Monica Education Fund and the Santa Monica-Malibu Council of PTAs. Both co-sponsors are nonpartisan, nonprofit organizations and never support or oppose candidates for public office. My name is Karen Gunn, and I am your moderator for this evening's forum. This year, we have 3 open seats for 4-year terms. We invited all 4 candidates to participate, and we're pleased that all 4 have confirmed their attendance. Each candidate participating in tonight's forum will have the opportunity to answer a variety of questions with a maximum of 1 minute for each response. Because there are only 4 candidates running for this office, all candidates will answer each question. Questions have been gathered in advance from the co-sponsoring organizations and through community outreach, and will be asked in random order according to a blind matrix created by the League of Women Voters of Santa Monica Education Fund. Timing this evening for this virtual forum will be done by Sharon Hart. So the candidates will be able to see her, and she is with the League of Women Voters of Santa Monica. All candidates participating in tonight's forum have signed a confirmation form committing to standards of civility and courtesy, helping maintain an atmosphere of respect and tolerance throughout the forum. We thank them, and as a moderator, I certainly thank you as well. And candidates, a reminder that when you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence. At that point, your mic will be muted and we will continue with the forum as agreed. We thank you in advance for your cooperation. So let's get started with the first questions. If elected, you will be part of Santa Monica College's elected governing body. So naturally, we would like to get to know you. We'd like the audience to have that opportunity. So as I call your name, please tell us who you are and why you're running for the Board of Trustees. You each will have 1 minute to answer, and I will begin with Susan Amanoff.
I am Susan Amanoff, and I've lived in Santa Monica with my husband and family for 38 years. My kids went to Franklin, and then to Lincoln, and then to Samo High. And now they've flown the coop. My career has mainly been in community colleges. I began my graduate study at USC in sociology and earned my PhD, and then began as an adjunct professor at El Camino. And I was there for several years when I applied for and got a full-time job in the LA Community College District, where I taught for many years thereafter. I developed curriculum in the sociology of the family and the sociology of aging, and started the Encore program for lifetime learning there at Pierce College, where it still remains. And so that is the brief analysis of the skill set that I bring to my work on the Board of Trustees at Santa Monica College.
Thank you. Mr. Brian O'Neill.
Good evening. My name is Brian O'Neill, and I'm a professor, a history professor to be exact, not a politician. This is my first time running for elected office, and quite simply, I'm running to serve my community. I've lived in Santa Monica 15 years. I'm married with 2 beautiful children that attend Edison Language Academy. My wife and I proudly call the Pico neighborhood our home. I've taught in higher ed for over 20 years. The last 15 of which have been at Long Beach City College and Cal State Long Beach. I know and understand what goes into making a college a dynamic learning center, as well as a dynamic member of the larger community. And this is my priority of my campaign, is to put the community back into Santa Monica Community College. Besides the serving the students, faculty, and staff, priority number one, a community college should also be serving the larger community, the needs of the larger community. And if elected, that will be my top priority.
Thank you. Margaret Quinones Perez.
Hi, I'm Margaret Quinones Perez. I've been a resident here of Santa Monica for 49 years. I have 2 children that were born and raised here in Santa Monica, went to all Santa Monica schools, and they also went to SMC and then went on to Ford University. I myself also was an alumni of Santa Monica College, a product of LAUSD as a special ed kid. I have had a 32-year career in community colleges. When I was on my campus at El Camino College, and even when I was a part-timer at Santa Monica College, I served in the vast spectrum of all the committees. I was an EEO rep, curriculum, budget. I was also part of my executive board of my union, and I served in that capacity. I stay on the community college board is because my life's work is the community college, and there's no greater access for someone than through the community college. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Greenstein Rader.
Hi, I'm Rob Greenstein Rader. I've been living in Santa Monica since 1999, and I first got involved in Santa Monica College taking classes as a resident, and I could tell it was an extraordinary institution. But the real reason I sought to join the board of Santa Monica College when I first ran was because I was the first one member of my family to go straight through to college. And my mother had dropped out of Michigan State, ultimately went back and got a teaching degree from Florida International University. My father had dropped out of Eastern Michigan, and my family made a great number of sacrifices so I could attend college and move along further than they had in creating opportunity for myself. And that's really what the community college stands for. Our college is an extraordinary institution, whether it's the Broad Stage, the Emeritus College, the Planetarium. We are involved in all aspects of the community, including the high schools. And I'd like to continue that excellence for our entire community. And that's why I'm asking for your vote in re-election.
Thank you. So let's turn to the next question in our second round. As the Santa Monica-Malibu Unified School District gets closer to an in-person reopening model, how can SMC partner with our school district and offer more concurrent online instruction? And would you commit to supporting an extended partnership with the district in order to best serve local high school students? And I will begin this round with Mr. Rader.
So presently, within 3 years of graduation, 60% of a graduating class at Santa Monica High School have taken classes at Santa Monica College through either dual or concurrent enrollment. One is when the class happens at Santa Monica College's campus. One is when it happens through the district's classes at the high school. So we are already fully integrated with the high school in a really nice fashion. We also have our Santa Monica, our scholars program over the summer, which focuses on students that are generally not seen as being likely to go to college, and we help make them prepared for college. Your question is about what we can do more during COVID. We have been working as closely as possible with the district in order to coordinate. We are willing to look at any proposals they have to expand our concurrent and dual enrollment programs. I haven't heard any specific proposals yet, but just the way we worked with Franklin, with John Adams, we work constantly with them hand in glove. They're right next door to us. And we would do the same thing with whatever program that they propose to us.
Ms. Quinones Perez?
The answer to your question is, I'm assuming needed a yes or no. The commitment is yes, yes, yes. I was a board member for Santa Monica-Malibu Unified for 8 years. So anything that we can do to expand that, we have an extensive history already with our science magnet program. We currently offer concurrent enrollment courses. We have our EOPS department that goes out to the college. We also have our disabled center that reaches out to the special ed students so that they can get an early track into Santa Monica College. And during the COVID pandemic, Santa Monica Malibu students are open to take our classes online. Are we ready to go in person like Santa Monica Malibu is Unified is exploring? No, I'm not in support of that right now for pure safety issues. But right now we will do anything possible for them to be concurrently enrolled if it's approved by the Unified to take courses. And we have had that partnership. The Unified hasn't been able to offer our curriculum.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill?
Excellent question. As far as SMC opening up for in-person instruction, that's not happening before next fall at the earliest. That's a state community college decision. We're all remote through the spring. And then improving the links and allowing more courses of SAMO students to be taken at SMC should be a priority during COVID, and then, you know, after things hopefully normalize in the next 6, 8, 12 months, we'll see. And that's one of the priorities that I'm running to ensure happens. That Santa Monica students, SAMO students, only make up about 5% of SMC graduates. So that's not taking a course here and there, that's actually getting your certificate. I think we should be doing much, much better. And again, this is a part of my position that we haven't done enough for our community, including our local high school students and residents.
Ms. Aminoff? Make sure to unmute.
Yeah, I thought they would do that. We have put emphasis on preparedness within our relationship with the Unified District. We have a Santa Monica College counselor in-house at Samo High, although it is not on ground at the moment. We have that counselor still available. And we also have the Young Collegian program, which prepares students who are perhaps the first in their family, like Rob Rader, to go to college. We help those students through the Young Collegians with a counselor assigned to them from the college and the high school. And they spend 2 years together. Learning the ropes and how to manage time and what's going to be required of them when they get to college. So we have that relationship already established.
Thank you, everyone. Let me move on to the next question. And there's a lead in before the question itself, sort of like a little introduction. A question that often comes up in our candidate forums has to do with the impact of the college on the surrounding neighbors and neighborhoods, with traffic and safety being the most mentioned. However, we're living in a time that is dramatically different from even the election of 2 years ago. Candidates, I'm going to read a statement from Fareed Zakaria to you, and then I'll ask you the question. The statement is, the pandemic upended the present, but it's given us a chance to remake the future, quote unquote. So here's your question. With that question or statement in mind, and looking forward to the next 5 years, what do you see as the impact of 2020 on the college's relations with its Sunset Park neighbors, including issues of traffic and safety? And I'll begin this round with Mr. O'Neill.
I agree completely with Fareed Zakaria. This is a great opportunity. Putting aside the, the destruction, deaths, and suffering we've all been going through, but long term, this is going to upend things. Again, coming from the perspective of a resident, somebody who's committed with young children living in the neighborhoods near the campuses of FMC, I'm very concerned about its impacts. I've talked to many voters in Sunset Beach that complain and offer horror stories about those issues you just mentioned: parking, people speeding down Pearl, unsafe driving. What needs to happen is we form a true good neighbor policy with the surrounding neighborhoods and create either a neighborhood council or some sort of joint task force where neighbors' concerns can be put at the front burner of the college's priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Rader.
I'm getting used to pushing that button to unmute.
Good.
I was invited repeatedly to speak at the annual meeting for Sunset Park, and Zena Joseph, at the last time after I presented, gave me a certificate that said not only was I a lifetime member, she said, an honorary lifetime member of Sunset Park, but after the second year, she said, I've already given you a lifetime membership. Now you're lifetime and beyond. Because we would go and we worked already very closely with Sunset Park. And while I appreciate that many members of Sunset Park can always find something that they would prefer done, we have taken great efforts. When we do construction, we have a set of construction guidelines that make sure, for instance, that the grounds are watered down to keep the dust down there so that it doesn't go and spread into the neighborhood. We used to have a special liaison from Sunset Park Neighborhood Association to monitor the beginning of the semester. After a few years, they said, we're no longer needed because you're not causing any more traffic. You're managing it so well. When they complained to us about cigarette butts possibly being distributed, thrown out on the streets, we fixed the problem and they admitted that they fixed it. We've been a great neighbor and we will continue being a great neighbor. So.
Ms. Aminoff. Make sure you're.
Okay. We take pains to be a good neighbor. When we were under construction at the Bundy campus, which was a former aerospace facility, we took pains to create a sound wall and landscaping. And in each project that we do, we make sure that there is a barrier between the college facility and the neighborhood. And we try to make it in every instance green. And if you take a look at some of the projects that were ongoing last year, for example, the student services building, everything, the emphasis was on greenery and on being a friendly face to the neighborhood, particularly to Pico. And so we do take pains to be a good neighbor. And I think in many instances we have succeeded. And so I look forward to hearing from people in Sunset Park who feel that there is more that we can do.
Ms. Quinones Perez.
I've been a resident of the Sunset Park area the 49 years that I've been here in Santa Monica. I haven't lived in any other part. Currently, right now, we live on 27th and Pearl. So we're pretty close to the college. I think that we have taken great efforts in whenever we start construction, that we talk with the neighbors that it's affected. And I know that I'm one of the board members, along with Rob and Susan, that really drill the staff and say, have you held the community forums? Have you talked to the neighbors? Have you made sure that the trucks that go in there and that we keep the noise down? So if we have failed recently, tell us, because recently we haven't gotten any indication that the construction has been a problem. The other thing is that we came up with the any line, anytime, so that a lot of students wouldn't be coming into Santa Monica, but that we're taking the big blue bus to minimize the traffic congestion. Also, we've made a partnership with the metro station.
Thank you, candidates. Let me move on to the next question. And this question, you'll have a question or scenario presented to you, and then a couple of questions related to that scenario. So here's the scene. In recent years, there has been an increase in online education, whether it be individual classes or entire schools. Still, prior to the sudden shift to distance learning experienced last spring, most education offered by Santa Monica College was through in-person classes. With COVID, education institutions, including the community colleges, have been forced to cross the digital chasm, some kicking and screaming, quote unquote, some against their will, and have moved to distance learning. So the first question around that scenario, looking forward to a post-COVID world, how do you believe we will be or should be structuring the delivery of higher education going forward? Or should we expect to go back to the old normal? And the first person for this question is Ms. Quinones Perez.
I have to watch my 13-year-old grandson who's on the spectrum. Early in the morning, he's pretty happy on Zoom. And then by 2 o'clock, he's in a fetal position. He can't handle it anymore. So, and I watch my husband on Zoom all day running a college as a president. So I understand the stress of it. My perception is that it's going to be a hybrid model. I think that we're going to have in-person and online, because I feel that a lot of our out-of-state students will probably be taking online classes. I think that some of our foreign students will also be taking online classes. And I also think that the adult learner, now that there's more availability of online classes, because they're working 40+ hours, they may be wanting to take more online than in person. So I see a hybrid model for the future.
Ms. Aminoff?
Going back to Fareed Zakaria for a moment, he's right. The delivery of higher education is going to change. And for members of the Santa Monica board who are probably tired of listening to me say it, we're probably not going back to anything. We're going forward to something new. And we're not exactly sure what that is. I think students themselves are going to be dictating what it is. We know that some students absolutely prefer the digital environment. They prefer having asynchronous classes as well as synchronous classes, so they have more choice. There are other students who long for and would appreciate being back on campus so they can have that socialization and contact. And so only time will tell what it will evolve into, but I believe that the board will be following trends in the state and trends across the country, and our students will help us make the right decision.
Mr. Rader.
So my fellow trustees have been, as usual, very on point. Prior to COVID, we were at about 15% online was what of our classes. And when we come back, my guess is we're probably going to go up to 25 to 35%. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be coming back, and then who knows where it's going to stabilize at. 2 years ago, we did our study session, and I was admonishing us that we needed to be ready for the fact that the digital natives are going to want more classes and more opportunities online. And I said, Khan Academy is going to eat our lunch if we don't get ready. If Coursera is going to take us apart, Udacity, they're all going to take us apart. And we have to be as nimble as a lot of the private servers, the private companies, because we offer often a much better opportunity for the students, a much better bang for the buck. And I feel very strongly about the sort of value proposition at community college. And so this is going to solve a lot of the problems, including actually the traffic problem you were talking about when 35% are actually taking online. So I think a lot of these problems are going to resolve even for our neighbors.
Mr. O'Neill.
I would agree. I would echo that there's no going back, and nobody knows for sure exactly what things will look like, but it'll be a combination of hybrid courses, as was mentioned, and then it'll come down to supply and demand. A lot of students do prefer purely online asynchronous courses. There are certain courses and in the arts and so forth that you really need to meet in person, at least at some point. So it'll be a collaboration between the faculty, the administration, and what the demands are. The students, I have elementary school students in 4th and 2nd grade. They're on Zoom all day long next to me, and when they get of age to be going off to college, the skills they're going to have as far as interfacing in the online environment are going to be way above what we can even imagine right now. So we got to be nimble.
Thank you. So here's a follow-up question, still based on Mr. Sakaria's statement in the scenario. Is online education a growth area for SMC? If yes, what would you see as the impact on student enrollment, school budget, and the proverbial college experience? If no, why not? And I'll begin this one with Ms. Aminoff. Remember to unmute yourself.
So I will begin with a personal anecdote that I think will explain the situation. We know of a young man who goes to a private university, but his parents told him that they were not going to pay for it because it was online. And they said, we're not going to pay that tuition. You're going to SMC and we're going to have that economy for ourselves. And so what I suspect is going to happen in the future is that community colleges are going to play a greater and greater role in the system. We are the workhorse of the system, and we are going to supply more and more courses to more and more students because we do it so economically. And so I suspect that the future is with the community colleges. And by the way, in the debate just moments ago, Biden has promised free community college. So we'll see how that all works out.
Mr. O'Neill.
Oops, there we go. Yes, the online offerings are going to increase. That I think is for sure, and it is a growth area for the college and all community colleges. As we were just speaking about, our students, many of them are preferring the full online format. Not all, but we are a community college, so a lot of our students are full-time, have full-time jobs. Some have families, have other obligations, and having the online delivery for them is much more conducive to all the other responsibilities they have in life. So I would want us to encourage the growth of our online offerings, and that'll involve also just getting certain faculty members. And speaking as a faculty member, I know some of us are jumping into this, full dive in, and then there are people resisting, and we'll have to get the right mix of which professors would want to go more and more online.
Ms. Quinones-Perez?
I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I do see it as a growth, and then there's a part of me that doesn't want to see it as a growth, because students do need the experience of what it is to be on a college campus and what it is to be with other people that don't look like them from their community. And some people don't learn well online. I don't. Other types of students do better in an in-person type of role. If we grow too much online, what I worry about, I could see doing basic courses like US history, political science, but we have to educate nurses. We have to educate the healthcare workers. We have our science courses. Those have to have online labs. Right now, we're not able to educate our nursing students fully because they have to be in person, and also there's not hospital internships for them. So I don't want to say it's going to be a big growth maker, because we're going to need our old way too.
Mr. Rader.
Short answer is not only will it be a continued growth area, but it's been a big growth area over the last 10, 15 years. People don't really realize this, but the number of people on our main campus during the day hasn't changed since the early 90s because we'd already gone 15% of our credit enrollment was online, as well as through a lot of scheduling, as well as the fact we had spread a lot of the population to our other campuses, whether it was Bundy, Madison, Emeritus down on 2nd Street, et cetera. So the question is how do we do that in a way that's economical? When I've looked at this issue, I know that it's surprisingly expensive to do things online. You'd think it'd be a lot cheaper. We have so far not been able to lower the cost because the biggest cost is, of course, labor. The other point that you asked about was it requires for out-of-state students to get permission from the home state. California doesn't have a blanket sort of joint arrangement. And I know for a fact that we're working on right now going state by state so that we can offer more credits to out-of-state students that are not necessarily foreign, but domestic out-of-state students.
Let me move to the next question. And to preface that question with this, California's community colleges are well known as the best education deal in town. For Santa Monica College, the biggest cost barrier for many students has clearly been the cost of living anywhere near the college. We have heard stories of homeless students, students living in their cars, students going without food. Here's the question. As we move into the post-COVID world and the changes it will bring, how can the college help? As a member of the Board of Trustees, would you consider dorms or student housing that can be covered by scholarships? Or do you have other answers? And I'll begin this round with Mr. Rader.
So for a number of years, I've been suggesting that we look at what we could do to provide housing for students and what would make sense. And many members of our community have approached us. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually re-forwarded a report we had gotten a number of years ago from a consultant that said there are ways we could explore it. Our expertise is not in housing. Our expertise is in teaching students and educating. And we would need to find strong partners either to build dorms and to manage dorms, because for us to take down that task would be too far out of our core competency. We did used to have partnerships with certain local landlords, largely in sort of corporate type housing. It didn't work out well because we couldn't make sure that students were getting a good deal. And again, the idea of in loco parentis, sometimes students would get in trouble and it wasn't being handled well. So when we're looking at it now, we're trying to make sure that we do it right and find reputable people to work with. But I do favor looking into that for the future.
Ms. Quiones Perez.
I have to be perfectly honest with you. I am not in favor of any type of student housing or dorms of whatever way they want to label it. I want to see housing that is developed. I've been asked this throughout the campaign for housing for our employees, also for housing for people, for the poor and the aged and the disabled in our community. I don't want to be part of any gentrification, especially in the Pico neighborhood. I have family there, friends. I don't want to see any more people of color and poor displaced in Santa Monica. So I'm not in favor at all of any student housing.
Mr. O'Neill.
I'd be open to the possibility, exploring, as Rob was just saying, if you have the right partners, there could be some viable options for some kind of affordable student housing. This is part of a much larger issue, obviously. Affordable housing in our city, Santa Monica, west side of LA is difficult across the board. Gentrification, I agree with Margaret. Yeah, I'd like to see it slowed down, but we have to also realize that the college itself, particularly with the numbers of out-of-state and international students who often come in and can pay higher rents, and that drives up the rents throughout the Pico area and around the college. It's an unintended sort of consequence, but it's a tough issue. It would be something that I would, obviously study and be open to possibilities, but it's not going to be an easy nut to crack.
Ms. Aminoff?
We have this year added the exploration of student housing to our 2021 goals and priorities, board goals and priorities. And Rob mentioned that we did explore this several years ago, and we have had a lot of community pressure to take a look at it again. And so it is on our list, it's on our to-do list. But important to know is that throughout the state where such housing exists, it's generally in rural districts with few exceptions. And so the cost of our land makes it somewhat prohibitive, but nevertheless, we're going to relook at it because there is community demand for us to do so.
Thank you. Let me move to the next one. The question that's coming up is one that comes up every election cycle. We've heard many pros and cons on the subject over the years. Some people say that SMC still has accepted too many non-resident students in order to increase income. Others say the influx of students from other states and countries enhances the educational environment. So we'd like to ask you the following question as this year's candidates for the Board of Trustees. How is it justifiable to ask the taxpayers of this community to support students from outside Santa Monica? Do you think the ratio of resident to non-resident students is right? Or would you work to change it? And if so, why? And I'll begin this round with Mr. O'Neill.
I think there has been an overemphasis on recruiting out-of-state and international students. This is not to say I'm not in favor of diversity and having, an international presence, out-of-state presence, but we got about 3,000 international students, about 2,000 out-of-state students, and they are charged a higher fee. So there's probably an economic rationale behind all that. I haven't been on the board all these years, and I can't give you, the numbers breakdown, but I think that has, whether consciously or not, shifted a focus away from really catering to our Santa Monica residents and Santa Monica students, which again would be my top priority if I were on the board. Having the college serve our community. We, Santa Monica taxpayers, pay about 40% of SMC's budget, and again, only about 5% of its graduates are from here in Santa Monica.
Mr. Rader.
So that's not actually correct what Brian, so let me just say this. 40% is not true. The entire operating budget comes from the state or the students. Local people only pay bonds, and those bonds, if you're a renter, are minimal. And if you're a homeowner, it's no more than $25 per bond for $100,000 of assessment. So $1 million house only pays $250 a year. The subsidy runs the other way. By helping build buildings in Santa Monica College, it enables us to offer more courses that more locals can take. And in fact, when the state chancellor's office did a survey, Santa Monica College District came #1 with 55% of the local residents having taken classes at Santa Monica College or their family members. It was the highest in the state. The irony is that by making your college a little bigger and by not enabling there to be out-of-state students and out-of-district students, it enables you to offer more classes to people that live within the district, just like a bus system has to serve people outside your district to enable you to have a bus line that works for people that live inside your district.
Ms. Aminoff.
Yes, so our international students actually create seats for local students because they pay so much more in fees and tuition. And it amounts to several $1 million a year for our budget. Now let's remember that in our current atmosphere, our international student population is down. We have families, international families who are reticent to send their kids to the United States because of our situation in Washington. They don't know whether their kid will be harassed, or they don't know whether their kid is going to get COVID. So we have a situation where our international population is down and our budget is taking a hit. So I want to be clear about the role of international students and what it does for the college and how it helps to finance the rest of our operation.
Ms. Quinones Perez.
I think I want to clarify, many years ago, the community colleges had boundaries, and they were that you could only take care of your local community. Now, when we talk about California community colleges, we open the door to all students. We are fortunate that international students and other students of means want to come to Santa Monica. I see their presence as offering opportunities to local students. And when I say local students, I don't mean just Santa Monica students. It's not correct that 40% of our budget is brought in from the local taxpayers. That's not correct. I want to see the students that come here from Compton, South Central, who come here from Southgate and Cudahy. I want them to continue to come and take all their buses and come here and be successful at Santa Monica. Santa Monica's values are based on open opportunities. And that's.
Let me move on to the next question. Thank you all for your answers to the one that we just discussed. In this next question, it has to do with fiscal responsibility, a major topic of importance to voters, both locally and statewide. It asks about your priorities as a trustee in terms of fiscal management specifically. The question is, if you are elected or re-elected, are you planning to propose any new initiatives or programs? Do you have any idea of what they might cost? Most importantly, these proposals are new. How would you propose to fund them? And I'll begin this round with Ms. Quinones Perez.
You know, thinking about that question, I don't, right now at this moment, when I think about we're in a pandemic mode, I don't see any new initiatives. I see our new initiative actually is bringing our campus back to life post-COVID. The other part is we started the program, the California Promise, or the Santa Monica Promise. We've only had that about a year, so it's still in its infancy. And that's where we pay the student fees. And if students qualify for their financial aid, we pay their books. I still want to see that grow here at Santa Monica College. So I consider that a new initiative in terms of bringing more a program that costs new monies. I don't see that right now. I see grants coming in that start initiatives. We just got one from the Hispanic Serving Institution, $10 million. I see those kinds of monies coming in with what we have now.
Ms. Aminoff.
This is a very good question. Thank you for posing it, because we are known as a transfer institution. That's our brand. And we have been the #1 transfer institution for so many years. But alongside, we also have our career programs. And so what we now call workforce. And we have done a very good job in creating new workforce programs to respond to workforce needs in the community. However, we all know that if a sociology class costs X dollars to put on, there are some vocational programs like nursing that cost X plus. And so it is the job of the board to make sure that whatever programs are suggested by the curriculum committee are programs that we can financially support.
Mr. Rader.
So I've served on our audit task force for probably the last decade, and we are one of the few institutions that has had clean audits. I believe it's now 13 years in a row. It's extraordinary. We have had no comments for a decade, over a decade. And that's an extraordinary accomplishment. Now, merely saying that we have the cleanest books of any institution doesn't sound like much of a brag, but it's actually, compared to our fellow institutions, very impressive. And one of the first things I did when I got on that task force was I kicked the administration out, and so that we talked directly to the auditors and asked how they're relating. And they've said that we have a very active board, not just our committee, but all the board members, Susan, Margaret, everyone, and all of us has been chair at one point, and they've commended us for our involvement with our budgets. We're not going to be doing a lot of new initiatives, but the initiative that we are going to be fighting to support is closing the achievement gap. And that's going to continue requiring strong administration and making sure that we get bang for our buck on whatever programs we do institute, and monitoring the metrics by we judge success.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, in the current economic times, it'd be pretty bold to be promoting some new initiatives. I would expand the Promise program, which actually was created at my school, Long Beach City College, and adopted by SMC. It's a great approach. Again, this is part of my emphasis on prioritizing Santa Monica residents, Santa Monica students. I just want to quickly retort Rob for a second. I mean, the Santa Monica College gets almost $1 billion in the 5 bonds. Now that's for facilities. That's not for the operating costs that, yes, come from the state and the students' tuition, but it's there. And servicing those bonds alone is going to cost us Santa Monica taxpayers about $2 billion, which to me is still a lot of money. And I don't know all the specific buildings and projects that were approved, but I would do my best to be a transparent overseer of that spending.
Thank you all. Let me move to the next question. This question came from a school district parent. Here's the lead in. SMC works collaboratively with the high school to provide college level classes to high school students at no cost. This is wonderful, but there are some logistical drawbacks that affect certain subsets of the population. For example, my daughter, who is special education with an IEP, was unable to advocate for herself to get her classes set up this summer. Despite being a minor, her parents were not allowed to speak directly with any staff at the school. Here's the question. As a trustee, how would you change the system to ensure that disadvantaged high school students, in parentheses, with special needs or language barriers or any other issues, who are handling their own registration and teacher communication, are able to still take advantage of these free classes? And I'll begin this round with Ms. Amanoff.
My heart goes out to that parent, because this is not something that we are going to be able to solve, the board. There is federal law, FERPA, which says that the college cannot communicate with the parents. Most of our students are adults. And so in this particular case, unfortunately, this child is a minor. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would want to talk to legal counsel about that. But the general rule is that when a student has an issue or a problem, the administration discusses that issue or problem directly with the student and not with the parent. And it's federal law. So that's something that I will research, and at an appropriate time, Karen, I'll let you know.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yeah, this is treading into tricky legal ground. I am in favor of opening up access for high school students to take courses at SMC, and You know, they're not legally adults, some of them at that age, and it's something that would have to be reviewed. I'm not an attorney, and there's different laws with the Americans with Disabilities Act and other local laws, state laws that might apply. But yeah, my heart also goes out to the parent. We can find a solution, though. I mean, we're all smart, you know, open-minded people, and it would just be a matter of bringing together the right experts who can really give solid advice on how to solve this problem.
Ms. Guiones Perez?
As you probably saw me gesturing right now, my grandson came in and it's like, go away, sweetie, go away right now. For me, first of all, I'm sorry the parent went through that. I really am, but there is a solution for it. And I know it because I had 2 kids that were special ed that were at SMC and a grandson who's special ed now. One of the first thing is that when the student is an adult, we cannot talk with the parent. The only way to get around that, and I've had it happen to me in 32 years, is that the parent would walk in with the student, and the first thing I had to say is to the student, do you give me permission to allow your parent here with you? I have to ask the students if it's okay if their parent can be there. And most of the time they say yes. Every once in a while they say no, and then it's like, okay, I think I'm gonna have a therapy session right now. So there's that. That's one way to get around. In terms of this particular parent, they could get in touch with our Disabled Student Center. We still have staff available online, counselors who they can talk to see how they could get along with that logistically. The key element is going to be that they have a minor child. That would be.
Mr. Rader?
Many people know that both my son, who is a freshman in high school, has an IEP, and my daughter, who is a 7th grade middle school student, has an IEP. And I spoke to Stacy Avadia at the Santa Monica Unified School District today about my son's upcoming IEP. And we only signed some paperwork on my daughter's IEP about 2 weeks ago. My heart goes out to any parent that has to struggle with the district, and I still participate very closely with parents groups. My suspicion is that there's a lack of communication, and I will be in touch with our administration and our vice president of students affairs to figure out what has gone wrong. Because if this is a minor, there should be an ability to communicate. And I know as a parent that has to fight for something for one of my children every week, the pain that this causes. But I think that there's probably a miscommunication here. And my suspicion is that we will be able to resolve this as long as it's a minor child. But even a parent of an adult, there are certain ways that we can help.
Let me move to the next question, which came from one of the neighborhood groups. SMC has put a number of facilities bond measures on the ballot in recent years. Given the investment that Santa Monica and Malibu property owners have made in the college, and the fact that very few SMC students are residents of Santa Monica or Malibu, as a trustee, would you support an additional SMC facilities bond measure in the near future? Why or why not? And what is your rationale? And I'll begin with Mr. Rader for this round.
This is a classic it depends question. What are the items on the bond? Every bond has a project list. So when the voters of Santa Monica ratified buying the Bundy campus, where we literally took a military institution and turned it into a nursing program, a building to house nurses, we were turning swords into plowshares. We were making it a much better facility. When they ratified us building the Broad stage at the Santa Monica College Performing Arts Center, when they ratified us building a new building for KCRW, when they've now ratified us having a new planetarium at the new science building, these are services that help the residents of Santa Monica and Malibu. They are services available to everyone. I go to the planetarium all the time. I'm the biggest hyper nerd that you've met. My second date with my ex-wife was at the Santa Monica Planetarium. So I take a backseat to nobody. I go to the Broad Stage, and I made sure that the Broad Stage was was bringing in students at Franklin Elementary for tours to make sure that our students were able to take advantage of the cultural resources that were paid for by bond measures that the voters approved.
Ms. Guiones Perez?
I don't anticipate any bonds, and right now I wouldn't support any bonds. Right now, people can barely afford to pay for their food, pay for their rent, pay for their mortgages. But I do have to say that every bond that we had strong approval ratings. We did pre-polls before we even put the measure on the ballot. So we tested out to see how our community felt about us doing a bond. And also, if you look at the passage rate, our community holds a value of law enforcement and the college and the local education. So I feel that what's there is a reflection of the community's values and what they want.
Mr. O'Neill?
As I just mentioned, we Santa Monica and Malibu taxpayers are footing the bill for about $1 billion in outstanding bonds as we speak now. That's, again, a lot of money. And some wonderful things have come about. Broad Theater, the planetarium. I live right by the media center, KCRW's new home, lovely. So my priority as a board member would simply be oversight to ensure that money is being spent wisely. You know, I know there's other projects in the city that, and to my mind, are just astronomical that the city council has approved. And, you know, these are public monies that should have more oversight. I haven't been on the college board, so I don't know all the details, but I would get up to speed quickly. I'm a quick learner, and be, make sure that that bond money is doing what it was supposed to be doing at the right cost.
Ms. Aminoff?
I don't know. I don't think this would be the moment where I would entertain a facilities bond. We're not on campus, and it just seems to me that it would be odd and wrong to go out and ask the community to foot a new bond when our buildings are empty. So we will see when we get back to campus and what our operations look like and how many students are coming to campus each day and what their needs are. But for Mr. O'Neill, I'd like to say we do have a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee that meets regularly, and their task is to take a look at these bond measures and how the district is spending the money. They're an independent group. And so we're satisfied after looking at their minutes that they are being the oversight that you refer to.
Thank you. Let me move to the next question. And this is one that has intrigued and inspired many of the candidates in our other forums this year. So we'd like to give you all the opportunity to be intrigued and inspired as well. It will be your last question. The lead-in is this. One thing has become clear in the last 6 months. COVID-19 has raised up every strength and every weakness or chasm in American life, including in our educational institutions. If elected or re-elected, you will be one of 7 decision makers. So you will not be in a position to unilaterally make decisions about the college district and enforce them. But we want you to dream. And so this question is for all of you. You're given absolute power over the Santa Monica College District for one day, just one day, and you can do one thing, just one thing. What would you do? Don't say it's unrealistic. We want you to dream and go for it. What would you do? And I'll begin this provocative question with Mr. O'Neill.
That's a wonderful question. what I would do is the omnipotent, omniscient, czar for one day at SMC is ensure that every student, every staff member, every faculty member, every neighbor had a fulfilling experience, in their classes, in their labs, just being out in the world. It would just be the perfect day. Nothing went wrong. Everybody got done what they wanted to get done. Everybody was nice to each other, socially distant, of course. Actually, no, this is in a future time. We don't have to do that anymore. So it would just be a day of true fulfillment and gratitude. At the end of that day, everybody would say, wow, I'm so blessed, right, to be associated with SMC.
Mr. Rader.
So after becoming a foot taller, this is what the motto of Santa Monica College is changing lives through excellence in education. And I think a lot about what it means to be excellent in education. And how do you move the needle with students? And what I say at board meetings, and I exhort our counselors and our professors, is that what changes the life of a student is when a student realizes that someone cares whether he or she succeeded or failed. And what I would try to do is not just let them know that either your teacher cares, your counselor cares, your coach cares, the administrators care. I, as a president, would go out there and walk amongst the students. When you realize that someone cares how you do in these classes, that's what changes their lives and helps them understand. Because some of them don't have that at home, some of them do. But community colleges help those people that need that extra push. And I'm always talking about how we can show them that we care, because that will let them know that whether they live or die and how they live or die matters to somebody.
Ms. Aminoff. Make sure to.
Yeah. So I would ask Michelle Obama to come to campus for one day and speak with our students and help them to dispense with racial tension, tensions caused by social injustice, tensions caused by gender inequities. I would hope that she would be able to provide a message of hope and love that would provide the students with the ability to come to peace with themselves, with our current society, and find ways of being together in more harmony. That's very wishful thinking, right, Karen? Very, very wishful.
Ms. Quiones Perez.
I think mine is pretty simple, and it's actually why I'm there on the board. And that is that every single student would be successful, every one of them, in whatever they wanted to do, that there would not be big academic differences in every student, that they all would be successful, and that there would be racial harmony, and that there would be no privilege, and that we would all be able to get along and respect and love each other. That's what I'd ask for.
Thank you so much. I'd like to close this forum by first saying, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Santa Monica Education Fund and the Santa Monica-Malibu Council of PTAs, we thank all of you for taking part in tonight's candidates forum, as well as for stepping up and stepping forward to run for office. We'd like to thank our timer, Sharon Hart, and Natalia Zerniskaya, our forum tech administrator. And to all of those in the, all of you in the audience, I'd like to say this forum has been live streamed to YouTube and will be available for replay on the League of Women Voters of Santa Monica channel. We encourage you to take the opportunity to inform yourselves, go to our YouTube channel, watch our candidate forums, all of them for the Board of Education, City Council, Rent Control Board, and now the Santa Monica College Board of Trustees. For more information on both local and state elections, we encourage you to check out Voters Edge at www.votersedge.org. It is the League of Women Voters of California nonpartisan online guide to elections. And so to the audience, we want to thank you for your time and your interest. It truly takes all of us to make democracy work. And please remember, elections are won by those who vote. So to everyone, I say, please take good care, live safely. Thank you, and good night. Take care.